On the night of August 8th, 1963, one of the most notorious heists in British history took place. A group of criminals executed a carefully crafted and audacious plan to rob the Royal Mail train that was transporting high-value cargo from Glasgow to London. The gang made off with £2.6 million, equivalent to approximately £50 million today. The Great Train Robbery, as it became known, shocked the nation and highlighted glaring vulnerabilities within the country's transportation and security systems. This crime remains one of the most talked about heists of all time, celebrated for its meticulous planning and execution, but also infamous for its long-lasting impact on law enforcement and criminal history. The plan behind the Great Train Robbery was not the result of impulsive thinking, but a meticulous, long-term planning. The gang, led by the notorious Buster Edwards and Ronnie Biggs, both career criminals with prior experience in robbery, spent months studying the movements of the Royal Mail train. This particular train, identified as number 1 special, was known to transport large amounts of cash, including money from banks, businesses, and post offices across Scotland and the north of England to London. The criminals were aware that such high-value cargo, especially cash, could be the perfect target for a heist. The gang, which included other criminals like Charlie Wilson, John Daly, and James White, was particularly well organized. They had intimate knowledge of the train's route, timing, and schedules. Most importantly, they knew that the train would pass through a relatively isolated area near Ledburn, Buckinghamshire, where there would be little chance of police intervention or timely rescue. The robbers' plan was to intercept the train, neutralize the crew, and remove the valuable cargo in the shortest amount of time possible, ensuring they would escape before the authorities could respond. To achieve their objective, the criminals would need to subvert the communication between the train and the station, giving the crew a false sense of security. This would allow them to board the train and execute the robbery without interference. This careful attention to detail, combined with the gang's deep understanding of their target, would prove to be the cornerstone of the heist's success. In the early hours of August 8th, the gang moved into position. The robbers traveled in various vehicles. Tan took positions near the selected ambush site. Their first action was to disable the signalman's box at a critical railway station near Ledburn. By cutting off communication between the train driver and the station, the robbers ensured that the train would be unaware of the impending danger. They had also rigged a signal to inform the train driver that the track ahead was clear, ensuring the train would continue its route without suspicion. As the train approached the predetermined location, it slowed down to cross a bridge, giving the robbers their moment to act. Within seconds, the gang boarded the train and quickly subdued the crew. The driver, Tommy Butler, and the senior guard, Jack Mills, were attacked. Mills was struck in the head, which caused him to lose consciousness, while Butler was confined to a compartment along with Mills, effectively neutralizing the train's crew and leaving the train in the hands of the robbers. At the same time, the criminals, using the information they had gathered during their extensive surveillance, made their way to the carriage where the cash was stored. The Royal Mail train had a specially secured carriage where large sums of money were kept, and this was the gang's primary target. Within just 30 minutes, the criminals efficiently loaded £2.6 million worth of cash onto waiting vehicles. The speed of the operation was remarkable, with the gang having anticipated and planned every move with precision. As quickly as they arrived, the robbers left. They had carefully mapped out escape routes, and each gang member took different paths to ensure they would not be captured together. While some left in the same vehicles, others scattered and used different means of transportation, such as trains, to distance themselves from the crime scene. The execution of the heist was flawless, and the authorities were left without immediate leads or suspects. When news of the heist broke, it sent shockwaves through the nation. The fact that such a high-profile crime had occurred with little to no resistance was staggering. For weeks, the police were unable to make any arrests. The robbers had left no physical evidence at the scene, and the gang had planned their escape so thoroughly that they appear to have vanished without a trace. For investigators, it seemed like an insurmountable challenge. However, as in most cases of high-profile crimes, the criminals' use of the stolen money would become their undoing. The gang members, who had been living in secrecy, began to spend the stolen cash, often extravagantly. Some of the robbers, including Buster Edwards, used the money to purchase luxury goods, such as expensive cars and property. This reckless display of wealth became a critical breakthrough in the investigation. By tracking these purchases, investigators were able to make crucial connections to the robbers. Despite their initial success, the robbers' carelessness with the stolen money ultimately led to their capture. The authorities started to trace the criminals' spending habits, which would eventually lead them to the gang's hideouts and their capture. The investigation into the robbery quickly intensified. Detective Superintendent Frank Williams was tasked with leading the investigation, which became one of the largest and most complex manhunts in British history. The police followed a trail of spent money, leading to the identification of gang members, but it was not without challenges. For the police, the break came when it was discovered that some members of the gang, including Buster Edwards, had been spending the stolen money without much care. Edwards was arrested after attempting to buy an expensive car with the stolen cash, which marked a significant turning point in the case. The authorities then began to focus on the criminals who had lived more quietly and more carefully hidden their wealth. As the investigation unfolded, police were able to track down the gang's hideouts. One such location was a secluded farmhouse in Buckinghamshire, where a portion of the stolen money had been stashed. While much of the money remained unaccounted for, this discovery led to a series of arrests. The gang's involvement in the robbery began to unravel as law enforcement pieced together their movements and financial records. Despite these breakthroughs, some members of the gang, such as Ronnie Biggs, managed to evade capture. Biggs, who had played a key role in the heist, was arrested in 1965. However, he famously escaped from Wandsworth Prison in London and fled to Brazil, where he lived as a fugitive for several decades. His escape and subsequent life on the run became one of the most famous aspects of the Great Train Robbery case, further embedding the story into British criminal folklore. The trial of the robbers was a highly publicized event, attracting considerable media attention. As the gang members were brought to trial, the public's fascination with the case deepened. The trial revealed the extent of the robbery and how the criminals had planned and executed their crime with extraordinary precision. Several gang members, including Buster Edwards, Charlie Wilson, and John Daly, were convicted and sentenced to long prison terms. The case was a major victory for the police, but also highlighted the limitations of security at the time, prompting immediate reforms in transportation and postal security. For Ronnie Biggs, the story did not end with his capture. His infamous escape from Wandsworth Prison in 1965 turned him into a legendary figure. Biggs evaded the authorities for years, living in Brazil under an alias until his eventual capture in 2001. His escape and return to the UK became part of the robbery's lasting legacy, cementing his place as one of the most well-known figures in British criminal history. The Great Train Robbery left a significant legacy, not only in the realm of criminal history, but also in the security systems of the UK. The theft exposed the vulnerabilities in the British rail system and prompted major changes in the way high-value cargo was transported. Security measures were tightened, and the methods employed by the gang were thoroughly studied to prevent future crimes of similar nature. The heist became one of the most iconic crimes in British history, not only because of the sheer scale of the theft, but also because of the manner in which it was carried out. The robbers were seen by some as anti-heroes, figures who managed to outwit the system. At the same time, the crime was viewed as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by organized criminal gangs. While most of the stolen money was never recovered, and only a small portion of it was returned, the robbery's notoriety endures. The tale of the Great Train Robbery remains a part of British folklore, often retold through books, documentaries, and films. The figures involved, particularly Ronnie Biggs, continue to capture the public's imagination, with their exploits remaining a topic of discussion to this day. The Great Train Robbery of 1963 stands as one of the most audacious and calculated crimes in British history. The heist's execution, the subsequent investigation, and the eventual trial of the criminals revealed not only the brilliance of the perpetrators, but also the vulnerabilities of a system that many thought to be impenetrable. Although many of the criminals were caught, their exploits continue to capture the public's imagination, making the Great Train Robbery a permanent fixture in British criminal history. Even today, the story of the heist serves as a cautionary tale for both law enforcement and those within the business of transporting valuables. The robbery's impact on security protocols within Britain's rail and postal services cannot be overstated, and the case remains a pivotal example of how criminal ingenuity can exploit weaknesses in even the most robust systems.